Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Stanford's Ask the Expert S&P edition. We're honored to be joined by Dr. David Fleischer, a professor of pediatrics specializing in allergy and immunology at the University of Colorado School of Medicine. He's also the director of the Allergy and Immunology Center at Children's Hospital Colorado, where he works every day to improve the lives of children and families affected by food allergies. His research focuses primarily on peanut and tree nut allergies, exploring why some children outgrow their allergies while others don't. He is deeply involved in cutting edge treatments, including oral, sublingual, and the exciting new epicutaneous immunotherapy, or EPIT. And that's the peanut patch therapy many families are hearing about. Dr. Fleischer, welcome. Can you start by telling us what drew you to the field and why food allergy remains such a personal and professional passion for you?
Well, first, thank you for inviting me in. Thank you for that overly kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. Food allergy for me, it started, it's ironic because I did originally want to do food allergy research. I came into fellowship thinking I wanted to do asthma research because I grew up with asthma and eczema, and I had seasonal allergies, but the asthma really was what affected me the most and probably drew me to the field of allergy in general. I think I got admitted to the hospital, a dozen times
Oh,
for
wow.
asthma when I was a kid. I remember getting those days. It was you got a shot of adrenaline and your epinephrine in your shoulder, sometimes one in each shoulder, and then albuterol. There wasn't much else. There were no inhaled steroids back then. I was on theophylline, so that's where my interests were more for asthma. But then I went to Johns Hopkins and Bob Wood. I think we all know who he is. One of the foremost, forefathers of food allergy, was my mentor. And he's like, "You're not doing asthma. You don't know it, but your future's in food allergy. Is not in asthma." So he's like, "You're coming and doing food allergy." And then I fell in love with food allergy. It's different. I think no two patients are the same, and the tests you have to interpret differently for other patients. I mean, it's fun for me doing food allergy. I think it's the hardest thing to teach. I think it's the hardest things for families to manage. And I think it's um, the research that you do, that we all do, really is improving the lives of for patients with food allergy. So I fell in love with it at Hopkins with Bob Wood, and then just since then got involved with COFAR when I was at National Jewish, and that got me more involved with the food allergy community, and then starting the section at Children's, directing the center. I mean, it really, I think you can really make a difference in families' lives doing the research that we do and
Right.
seeing the patients that we use.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, David. And one of the topics I wanted to dive into today was the peanut patch, or epicutaneous immunotherapy, which is in the final stages of FDA approval. Tell us a little more about the peanut patch.
So it is what it sounds like. It is the patch that you actually wear. So there's an adhesive kind of film around kind of elevated foam disc, and the center of that disc is the peanut protein that's sprayed on. And that foam sits a little bit above the skin, so the body basically perspires or sweats underneath that patch, dissolves those proteins. Those proteins get through the upper layers of the skin, again, get into what are called Langerhans cells or antigen presenting cells, the ones that take up the allergen and then take the allergen and go to regional lymph nodes to basically do the immune effects of what immunotherapy does. The interesting thing about the patch is it's a fixed dose of 250 micrograms, so it's a thousandth of a peanut. So we just have to keep in mind where we go over some of the data of the results. In a year of therapy and you add up 250 micrograms, that's only 125 milligrams of peanut protein that you're actually exposing the body to. And when we go over the results, it's pretty impressive, the power of the skin, of how it can desensitize patients with such a low dose. We can go over the differences of what that means between OIT and other things too. But that's the basic premise, is that you're just wearing this patch skin that dissolves the protein, and then it gets to the destination process through the skin, basically. So it's a novel way of doing it. So it's not, you can't just put peanut under a Band-Aid, call it epicutaneous immunotherapy. This is novel technology and other things. So it's pretty cool. So
That sounds so cool. And what kind of results have you been seeing in the studies so far?
so as therapies, these therapies tend to work better the younger you are. Okay. So the first study that came out now years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, the PEACE trial was a 4 to 11-year-old study. And I only bring this one up because it led to the next 4 to 7-year-old study. And then while we're doing it, 1 to 3-year-olds as well. But the 4 to 11-year-old study or a PEACE trial showed it worked in about a third of patients, but it didn't reach a statistical endpoint with the FDA. Don't need to go into great details of that, but because of that, it was deemed a more negative study, even though there were responders and a third of the patients either got to, about a peanut and a half up to 4 to 5 peanuts after being on a year of therapy, but it was only a third of patients. And because it missed its statistical endpoint, it was a negative study. So basically they had to go back, reanalyze the 4 to 11-year-olds, and they found that 4 to 7-year-olds did much better than the 8 to 11-year-olds. So that's why the next study, the test that's been fully recruited now, and the results will be out October, November of this year. That's the pivotal phase trial. And you're saying, yes, we're super close to hopefully FDA approval. That's the pivotal trial in 4 to 7-year-old, because again, 4 to 7-year-olds did better than the 8 to 11-year-olds. So we'll have that's been recruited. 1 year data will be out, and then hopefully, submission to the FDA will be by the end of the year with approval sometime maybe next year. The other study that's where we are is the comfort study with 1 to 3-year-olds. The epitope study was the 1 to 3-year-old efficacy trial, and that one really showed greater efficacy. So 2/3 of those patients, almost 70% compared to 1/3 in 1 to 3-year-olds were responders by definition to the therapy. So what that means is, again, 1 to 3-year-olds did even better than the 4 to 7-year-olds, right? So
Yeah,
the
yeah,
younger you do the therapy, the better. It doesn't mean it won't work, but the indication is now they've got the efficacy data for 1 to 3-year-olds based on epitope in the phase 3 trial. The company wanted more safety data in 1 to 3-year-olds. Understandable, because it's not been used in that young an age. We didn't have to do another safety trial for 4 to 7-year-olds. They're having another 600 patients from the test trial. So basically, the bottom line is hopefully by next year, the 1 to 3-year-old study, because it's a 6-month study, will done. Will go to the FDA for 1 to 3-year-old approval as well. So my hope is by next year, 1 to 7-year-olds will be able to get the peanut patch, and that will lead the company to some further revenue to be able to develop milk epicutaneous
yeah.
immunotherapy, hopefully next. And then hopefully, if they continue to be successful, maybe they'll do tree nuts and other things like that. So we'll see.
Yeah, so exciting. And as we're
Yeah.
gearing up, for FDA approval, and we now have options for 1-year-olds. So soon after they get diagnosed, there is FDA approved peanut oral immunotherapy. And as
Sure.
we achieve FDA approval for peanut patch, can you speak a little bit more about how the treatment will compare to oral immunotherapy?
Right. So to compare it to oral immunotherapy again, that's why I mentioned at the onset, that over a year of therapy with epicutaneous immunotherapy, you're only exposing to 125 milligrams of peanut protein total. So if you can get patients to 4 or 5 peanuts after a year of therapy, that's pretty impressive. But with oral immunotherapy, the Palforzia product you're talking about, the maintenance dose is 300 milligrams. So it's 1,000 times that. With 1,000 times the dose, you're going to get more efficacy quicker.
Mhm,
That's the
mhm.
biggest thing, the difference. You've got to be a little more patient with the patch because you're using a lower dose. Uh, it's just going to take a little bit longer. So maybe it will take 18 to 24 months or 24 to 36 months to reach gram levels of protection that you could reach with OIT, right? So you just have to be a little more patient. But with that comes more practical things, since that there is no updosing you having to wear in the patch. You start the patch. I don't know when it's FDA approved whether you'll have to start it in the doctor's office or not and wear it for 3 hours like you
Right.
do in a research study.
Yeah, yeah.
see what happens. But the bottom line is you start the patch somewhere, hopefully at home, maybe at the center, first one, just to make sure there's no anaphylaxis, depending on what the FDA makes them do. And then you increase the time you wear it at home to 24 hours a day over several weeks. Okay. And then there's no up dosing, so you're not coming in during that time.
Right.
The other things make it more practical are there's no effect with exercise. So you don't have to withhold
Mhm.
exercise before or after the patch. There's no
Right.
effect with illness. So when you get sick, you don't have to call your OIT doctor and say, I'm sick and I need to hold my dose, or do I need to, and when can I restart it? There's no hot bath or shower effect with females and
Right.
menstruation. Um, the biggest thing is illness too. Illness doesn't seem to affect whether you react when you're on the patch when you're sick. So you can wear the patch through illness, whereas others, the OIT, you can't. So there's some big differences that make it a little more practical. You just have to be more patient. But I think how it fits into I think that's your next question. Just lead into it. um, how it fits into things, or we're going to get to this, is, if we have it available now, I think there would be a lot of patients that would choose it just because, well, you will talk about my early intervention work doing with therapies and things.
Uh,
I think, again, the earlier you do the therapies, the better these work. But I think there are a lot that are scared to do OIT because they're worried that their infant or toddler can't tell them, I'm having a reaction,
You're having a reaction. Yeah.
my stomach hurts, all these other things that you want a verbal patient to be able to say, right? Whereas the patch is so safe, the safety of it's been
Hmm.
proven in multiple studies, that your risk of anaphylaxis is much less than OIT. Um,
Hmm.
from a safety standpoint, that's the other advantage, is it seems to be safer than OIT and doesn't seem to have a much higher rate of reaction than if you just avoided the food, right? So I think there are certainly advantages, but if it was approved now, I think there'd be lots of patients that really want to, and they're waiting for the patch because they have kids that are in after school activities, or they don't have an hour to watch their child every day, or that hour, the few hours that they do have, they want to just be with their kids and not worry about giving a dose. And I mean, the OIT is fantastic. We'll talk about it later. I think it works really, really well. It's just not for everyone. And we really want choices for our patients.
Right.
And the more options we have, the better we have, more tools we have in our toolbox, the better we have. And it's up to the patient to decide. But the way I see patches, I would start these patients on it very early after failed introduction. And we're going to probably or try to do a study with DBV in 6 month olds and above. So you just started a really failed introduction. But if you started at age one, which would approval would be hopefully and above up to age 7, is you use it for 12, 18 months and then challenge those patients. And then if they get to a certain dose, why not continue the patch and then add oral immunotherapy on top of it? So that's how I see using it. I
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
it as a way to desensitize patients initially in a very safe and very practical way that's not going to interfere with really daily activities for as much as OIT does, and then add an oral dose potentially after you've used it for a while. Or continue the patch because the follow-up studies, EPO, PECs, and people studies, and the other studies with looking at longer-term outcomes show that longer-term use of the patch again catches up with OIT. So some of these patients can get to 3 to 5 grams of protein by 3 years of therapy. 3 years of therapy, again, that's about one peanut, 1.5 peanuts they've been exposed to total, through the skin. So it's really impressive what the skin can do and the safety of it and practicality. So I certainly, it would be a criminal thing if it doesn't get approved next year, because I think you've worked with it mid part of the studies, and
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
good way, it's a good treatment option to have. And I think milk, especially if they can develop the patch,
Right.
can start these little ones on it. Milk OIT scares me still. I mean,
Yeah.
it's one
Yeah.
of those ones that is a scarier OIT one to do than even peanut. So
I'm sure you've come across this in your clinic too when you do OIT and it's been successful, but we sometimes see such severe food aversion where they're just struggling with one of the foods. And a lot of times it is peanut. And I'm just getting, oh, I can't wait for the peanut rush to be
yeah,
approved. Then we
it's
can,
hard.
they can, yeah.
The
So it'll
younger
just
ones
make
tend
the
to,
options.
the
Yeah.
younger ones tend to not have the 1 to
The
3 year
peanut
olds
version as much. Yeah.
tend not to have it as much. They tend to have the
Yeah.
toddler version, just a big toddler who don't
Yeah.
wanna do things and saying no to everything, but no, I agree. I think the hard thing is, as you know, is you a 6, 8, 10-year-old that you told for years, "Don't eat this." They're of
Yeah.
an age
Yeah.
where they're reading their own labels. They're of an age where maybe they remember a reaction that they had or something. Then you say, for years, "Don't eat this," or die, or you get really, really sick, right? That they're not gonna wanna eat it because they don't trust you because you're telling for years, "Don't do this," and all of a sudden the doctor says, "Do it." You're like, "No."
Do
So
it
there's
every
that
day. Eat
huge
this one.
no, there's that huge aversion, yeah, and
Yeah.
documented in
Yeah.
multiple studies, as you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and we see it in the older kids, and
Yeah.
I've got one 14-year-old, that just started on, and I always cringe a bit with the teenagers because I just know
Yeah.
most of them don't wanna do it. It's the parents that want them to do
Yeah.
it. And during the induction to get his starting dose, he just had, so many subjective symptoms the whole day. We got him through the first day and brought him back. But since we started him on a dose, we've been backing down the last 2 weeks because he keeps having subjective symptoms. But it's like
Yeah.
anxiety level at that stage and the aversion at that age is just huge. I'm like, I don't think this is the therapy for you, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
definitely OIT has its definite benefits, and the empathy.
Right. Right.
You'll get more bang for your buck quicker, but you've got to deal with a lot more restrictions
Yeah.
and things. Look, but I love doing OIT in young ones. I mean, I just
Yeah.
don't do it as much in 6, 8, 10, 14-year olds just because it's for them to do something every day as adolescents, it's just hard. I mean, I've got 2 adolescent young adults and compliance is just
Yeah.
amazing.
That would be so exciting if it's approved for 6-month-olds and up. I know we have to
Yeah,
get
no,
to
I
the
think
1-year-olds and up, but
yeah,
yeah.
I can't see why it's not gonna be safe for
Yeah.
6
Yeah.
months
Yeah. I
regardless.
saw a 7-month-old in clinic yesterday, just got diagnosed
And
with
you just
peanut
start
allergy
'em
last week.
yeah, you start
You
them on the
know?
patch at 7 months. A year of the patch may work for
Yeah.
them. You don't know, but
Yeah.
you start
Yeah.
that I mean, as you know, the patients that tend to not outgrow those allergies, their IgG levels go up and up and other things, and if you can catch them
Yeah.
early,
Yeah.
and that's when their
That could be
immune
best.
system is a little less mature, then, these therapies will help more. No, I think
Very
something
exciting.
safe like that starting at 6 months with at first introduction failure, because 'cause we're not gonna prevent all cases of allergy with
Right.
not
Right.
things, so, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, it would be a godsend to have that down to 6 months too, so.
Yeah. This actually brings us to our next topic, which,
Okay.
beyond the peanut patch, your research is reshaping the way we approach food allergy treatment. And rather, in what you just said, rather than waiting for children to outgrow their allergies, you're exploring how early intervention might hold the key to preventing allergies before they even develop. So, could you tell us a little more about early intervention?
I think the key thing that, when I plug, Karina and her work with diet divorce, because, she's really done fantastic work with that, and I think that's one of the newer things that have come out, the maternal and infant diet diversity play a role. So we're working on trying to get our randomized controlled trial to actually look at her scores and actually the diversity in diet and see if we can finally get it. But the funding is not the easiest, obviously. But so we're
Mm-hmm.
working on prevention too. But in the failed introduction, so if you fail for whatever reason, I think there aren't a large amount of data on OIT in 1 to 3 year olds or 1 to 4 year olds or SLIT or sublingual immunotherapy or EPIT or any treatment really under 4 because again, just doing infant and toddler trials not the easiest ethically and IRB and all those things, but also it's just hard to do those trials. So they're not. I shouldn't say safely. I think there's some safety concern in doing studies in infants and toddlers. So, but I think in the small studies that have been done, like the impact trial that looked at 1 to 4 year olds with OIT with peanut allergy, and that was one of the larger ones. Besides the Devil study that Brian Vickery did, 30 something patients. Those studies, showed the younger you do the therapy, the better chance you have at probably desensitization, but also somewhat remission. The ultimate goal of these therapies, the primary goal of these therapies is desensitization for that protection, right? But only the goal is I'd cure these patients of their allergies too. Kind of the holy grail in these therapies. What does long-term tolerance mean induced by a therapy versus outgrowing it? Is it the same thing? I think we've got some opportunities to get there, therapies to the point of tolerance, but we've
Yeah.
got opportunities for sure. So
Yeah. And, that brings up, one of the conversations I had yesterday with the parents of the 7-month-old,
yeah,
what if my child outgrows the peanut allergy? How can we predict that versus treating
yeah,
early? So that was one of the questions. And I'd love to hear how you approach that conversation with your young children,
yeah,
families of young children.
yeah. I think that goes back to the early intervention part. I think patients outgrow milk and egg allergy, and we feel most of them, 85, 90% by age 5. There are certain, ones don't tolerate baked milk and egg that are, your ones that are, that go into probably double digits of age with the milk and egg allergy. I think most don't outgrow peanut and tree nut, only 10, 20% probably of all the outgrow, whether, you know, across the studies, including seeds and seafood's probably in the same thing that most don't outgrow it. So I think I like to be aggressive with the early intervention, even if you're not going to outgrow it. I mean, or sorry, even if you're going to outgrow it at age 5, why not help that out if we can make sure you guarantee you outgrow it by age 5? If you failed bait introduction at 12 to 15 to 18 months, put them on OIT right away. Or, we'll start looking at our institution, our ladders too, that Karina and others have helped develop, like the milk and egg ladder, and work that Jonathan Hurricane has done in Ireland at EDO5s, listening dose 5%, building the ladder for milk from there, ones that aren't baked tolerant. So I think there's opportunities to do early intervention, even in the ones that
Mhm.
grow it. But we don't have,
Right.
back to the question is, we don't have the tools for precision medicine to figure out who's going to outgrow it or not. You
Right.
kind of have to give it 2, 3 years to see what IgE levels are doing in the blood or skin tests are doing. Mostly IgE levels. If your IgE levels are going up over that first 1 to 3 years, you're probably not going to be an early outgrower of any food, right? So I think these therapies are important to catch them in that first 1 to 3 years before those IgE goes up and up. So I think if you can do, whether it's epicutaneous immunotherapy or oral immunotherapy or sublingual immunotherapy that's been studied down to age 1 to 4, when Kim's work out of North Carolina and Duke. Again, I think the remission rates when you look at SLIT with 4-year-olds was highest in the 1 to 2-year-olds and versus the 2 to 3 versus the 3 to 4. Remission rates were in the 50, 60 range instead of 20, 30 range where impact was. So I think SLIT's got an opportunity for really early.
Mhm.
I think EPIT does. I think OIT, but I think these ladders also can help out in a safe way, obviously with an allergist and someone that's doing it, because we know there can be severe reaction to ladders and other things if you do them on your own and you're not under the supervision, even a dietitian too. But I think there's, even in the ones that are going to outgrow it, I don't think there's harm in doing, being aggressive and guaranteeing that, what I tell families is that, um, it's about 9 out of 10 patients, if you look across studies, maybe that can
Mhm.
stay on the therapy that don't drop out. 5 to 10% may drop out for GI reasons on OIT or
Mhm.
reasons, current reactions and things. So I say if 9 out of 10 can stay on the food, then that's a better chance of outgrowing it potentially. We spaced out our doses to try to get them down to once or twice a week with the nuts and things just to make it more practical.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think why not be aggressive with the ones that are going to outgrow it? But I wish we could predict that we had the precision medicine to know A, who was going to outgrow it or not, but B, know which therapy is best for which patient, because that's the other question to follow up on yours is how do we know which therapy is going to be best and we don't, right? That's another part of precision medicine that we'd like to get to because we're starting to see Xolair. You guys were a big part of Outmatch and things, and I've seen some failures. They're not responders in challenges. We'd like to know why, right? So that's another part of precision medicine is getting the right patients for the right there. So
That's a question we still have to find the
yeah,
answers
well,
to.
go get
Yeah.
to them.
Um, Switching gears a little more
Yep.
now. Understanding allergy reactions in preschool age children. So your research has delved into the patterns of allergic
Yeah.
reactions in young children and how we can better prevent and manage. So could you speak a little bit more into that?
Yeah, there was a study back in COFAR, back in my National Jewish days, and we were just looking at reaction in patients, allergic reactions that they have by accidental exposures, and we found that there were a good portion of purposeful ingestion, uh, where families are actually doing what we know they were doing probably, but this was one of the first studies to show that they were purposely just testing out their allergies to see if they were still allergic, right? When we tell them don't do these challenge. But we know it always happened. I mean, but this was one of the first studies that showed purposeful ingestions was a certain percent. And then we looked at reaction rates. We determined, detections for different food and settings, on some other interesting things, who is providing those foods in the accidents, and there's grandparents that we suspect that often don't know about food allergy or believe in food allergy and will say, oh, they're the kids, the grandkids, I'm going to try a little bit of this and see what happens. I don't believe it till I see it kind of thing. Found out for use, it was not what we expected it to be. But I think that's a common thing that's seen across
Mhm.
studies and other things that the rate of what should have been used for epinephrine based on anaphylaxis definition, higher than what's actually used, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah,
that was a definite thing that we found that I think only 30%, used epinephrine when they should have. But we know that parents and patients don't get the prescription all the time. And if they do get the prescription, they don't carry it. And if they do carry it, then they don't always use it when they're supposed to. And I think that's the nice thing about some of these other epinephrine options that are coming out.
yeah, yes, yeah,
Um, so, the Neffy obviously coming out, a nasal one, good thing to have a non-injectable Anafilm, the anaphylaxis sublingual film, but it'll hopefully be out next year. I mean, that's an exciting one. So I think that was the anaphylaxis things will hopefully improve with non-injectable form of
yeah.
epinephrine, so I think we've got some work to do, but there's good options coming. So
Yeah, it's a very exciting time having all these options.
it is. I mean, look,
Um,
it's fun doing what we do, and I think the research is. I tell families it's a good time to have food allergy. Not that I want your child, but it's not a bad time because there still is a lot of investment in research and food allergy, at least despite what's happening with research around the country.
yeah, yeah. And based on some of the findings of the study, did you have any thoughts or suggestions regarding how can we better educate caregivers, teachers, relatives, grandparents?
Yeah,
Um,
I think the hardest thing to do
yeah,
is give your kid a shot. I gave my son an injectable biologic for 2, 3 years and it has
yeah,
been adolescent and it wasn't fun as a doctor giving my kid a shot, so um, shots are it's just hard. Mateo, my youngest, had anaphylaxis to one of his allergy shots. And I still remember that gut punch of giving him epinephrine, or he got epinephrine. I didn't give it, but he got it that day. And just, it's that constant fear, though, that families have with food allergy that I don't have to worry about with the food allergy part, right?
yeah, yeah,
But I think we try to educate. I think the one thing that we see at food challenges as a positive outcome when you get epinephrine is that the families really
yeah.
feel empowered to give it next time. I always say there's no downside to a food challenge and there's no downside to getting
Mhm.
epinephrine because you'll see how quickly it works and hopefully you'll feel more comfortable getting it next time. So that's, I think, something that it's empowering, but it's hard to inject your kid with something that they
Mhm.
don't want.
Mhm.
So I get it. But so I think we try to get that message across, but I think until there are non-injectable ones, it's not going to be that easy. I think you will start to see more epinephrine use I'd be curious. Someone asked me on a call, like, could we compare, the use of our challenge units, how much epinephrine second doses we use if we use sublingual earlier, because we all hem and haw a little bit. Do I really want to give epinephrine? Do I really want to give this kid? But if we use it quicker and it has a little bit quicker onset, longer half life, whatever, will we use it and use less second doses
Yeah,
or something like that? So that'd be an interesting study to do across
it
center,
would be.
but
Yeah,
we'll see.
we'll
So
see.
I try
It's
and we
exciting.
just try to educate. Don't feed your kids purposely the food. Let us do
Unless we
that.
do it in clinic.
You know what always happens. You come back and, oh, yeah, I'm already eating egg. Don't worry. Now it's
Now we'll move into some rapid fire questions.
okay.
And really, in a quick round to get your expert insights on some of the most common concerns have. So, question number one: what's the biggest misconception about food allergies?
Um, I mean, look, I love that there's so much food allergy awareness now. I think restaurants asked us. I mean, we can't get the restaurants to put it on their menus like in Europe and things, but when
Mhm.
labeling, they asked. I mean, the awareness is there. I think there's just a lot, as you know, people that feel they have food allergy that don't. So there's a lot of myths about what is food allergy and what's not. We get a lot of referrals for highs and it has to be a food. We get referrals for abdominal pain, it has to be a food. I think the messages are getting out there. I think we got past the days of doing food panels for patients with eczema, and getting primary care providers to not do those and avoid that. I think the education getting out there that, we can't diagnose intolerances. We really, to abdominal pain and things like that. I think, but there are companies and things that prey on those people out there. Unfortunately, I think, there's IgG testing, other things that you can get that people claim is predictive of intolerances. So I think there's a lot of missing things. I think those that have food allergy, those that treat food allergy know the impact that it has on families and the whole quality of life of the whole family. So I think we really want to diagnose it correctly. And then we don't want to overdiagnose it. And there's certain things that just aren't food allergy too. And so those are my biggest things. But I think we've done a better job. I think of getting referrals to us from patients too. That's the other message I probably would get out is just refer because we've got early intervention things that we can do. So send them to us. Don't take on the burden of food allergy in your private practice because we want to start these therapies early and we'll have hopefully 5 or 6 options. There's vaccines that are coming to other anti-IgEs coming, other things. So yeah.
Second
I don't know how
question.
rapid that was. I'll
In,
try to do more rapid
oh
than
no,
you.
you actually dived into some of the other questions. So, what in your view, what is the biggest challenge in treating food allergy or peanut allergies today? You've
Um,
already probably have addressed this, but
I think no, but I think there's one more challenge. I think, now as we get more products, things approved, it's
yeah.
getting harder to get patients to get the next products approved because as you get more things that are approved, it's harder to get patients that want to go on placebo for
Mhm.
6 or 12 months right into a study. So I think that's what I think that I try to impart it with the companies because if they keep
Yeah.
pushing, get more and more patients in quicker, but we have to tell them the reality is
Yeah.
you've got to present what options you have available now, what options are in
Yep.
research. You let the family
Yep.
decide. So it's getting harder to get those studies done. So I think that's a trend that we're going to see, which is, again, is it a bad problem or is it a good problem? It's a bad problem for getting the studies and then other options approved, but it's a good problem to have multiple options available to patients. So I think that's the harder thing that's been with recruitment and things that will continue.
Right.
I think the other part is that we need to not just focus on peanut allergy. We focus so much on peanut, but milk and egg are so much more prominent, the young ones. And milk, there's just a lot of things that we could do collaborating with the latter and other things that people are doing in Europe I think we got to focus on some other foods too. Sesame is an up and coming one, but there's only OIT. Is it going to be, can some of these vaccines be changed to model not just peanut? If there's an oral nanoparticle one, can we change the nanoparticles around peanut and tree nut proteins instead of peanut proteins or whatever? So there's Aerovax, can it make the vaccine similar, but now with tree nut proteins or sesame? So I think we need beyond peanut and beyond OIT and epit and slit even too.
That dovetails nicely into my next question, which is how do you see food allergy treatments evolving in the next 5 years?
5 years, we should have slit approved, so lingual immunotherapy.
Yeah.
We should have epit, the epicutaneous approved. Within 5 years, we should have other anti-IgEs hopefully approved, so they may
Mhm,
have
mhm.
higher affinities or earlier onset, frequent injections, higher Ig levels with those anti-IgEs that are coming, potentially it's being claimed at least. So we'll see what happens in studies. We have one or two vaccines within 5 years
Yeah.
as well. Just on things. So I think we'll have on two hands worth of things to at least choose from by then. So I think that's pretty darn
Yeah.
good compared to where we started. And I mean, I'm a little bit older than you, but I started 25 years ago. It was we weren't even doing big stuff. It was like you just hope you're gonna outgrow it. We'll see you in a year. We'll retest your blood levels and maybe we'll skid test you in a few years. But we keep checking your blood levels every year and hope you're in that 80% outgrown by 5 or 20% outgrown peanut. And but there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, like the precision part of food allergy is just not there. It really,
Yeah.
it really isn't. I think we don't know why some patients get food allergy, others don't, with no family history, no eczema, no risk factors. We don't
Right. Right.
why some patients outgrow it versus others don't. This is like go into it. We don't know why some patients lose tolerance over time and get
Mhm.
pies as an adult or
Yeah.
allergies as an adult, right? Why can you eat shellfish for years and then suddenly as an adult lose that
Yeah.
tolerance? So there's so much we just don't know
We
with
just
food
don't. Yeah.
allergy. It's at its infancy, but it's an exciting time because I think there's a lot of research, whether it's treatment or the epidemiology or prevention, a lot of great work around the world going on. So
Yeah. And then the last question, what advice do you have for families dealing with food allergies on a day-to-day basis?
I think the parents have really changed over the years. I think the parents that I see now are really proactive. I think they're most of them, you know, and it may be a bias of what I see, but I think even I think just the majority are really aware of food allergy and some of the things that are going on with research and other things. I think they want to be proactive. They don't want to just do nothing. So I think we need to be the ones to help them guide them to what that is, to doing nothing. Is it OIT? Is it going to be EPID? Is it going to be SLIT? Is it going to be some combination? Is it going to be Xolair in combination with something else? I don't, so I think we have a lot of hope for families now that we really do have decent treatments already. Options. They're not the best for everyone and not for everyone. Avoidance is still a reasonable thing, but I think we've got good options and we've got great ones coming. Like epinephrine option. We've got prevention things we're working on. So it's a good time for you to have food allergy. I mean, my goal, honestly, with the food allergic patient nowadays is if I can not have any kid allergic by school age, by 5 or 6, we can start all these therapies by 6 months or 1 to 3 years of age or
Right.
1 to 2. If we can get them eating the foods regularly by 4, 5, 6 years of age, then we've done a good thing. We're not going to ever put ourselves out of this, but if we can have kids that are just regular eating their foods, whatever therapy they've been on, and it's just they're eating it regularly, and we call it a clinical remission or cure, whatever it is, then we've done a good thing. So that's my goal is to try to not have school age allergic kids with these therapies. And I think we can get to that point that, we may not get rid of all of them by that age, but if we can get flip the paradigm of the ones that aren't outgrown as much, like the seeds and the peanut and tree nuts,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
push the other ones that weren't gonna outgrow milk and egg early and get them to be in that group by age 5 to be at least eating some baked or somewhere on the ladder, then we've done a good thing for all patients. I think we've got really good options coming that we can fulfill those parents' goals of wanting to be proactive for their kids. So
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's so nice to know what you were mentioning. Nowadays, as you diagnose food allergy, it's no longer just okay, hope for the
it's
best,
very
just
optimistic.
avoid
It's
it.
a very
Right?
optimistic conversation.
Right. It's like we can do this, we can do this, and we can do
Yeah,
this.
it's
Yes,
not
we do.
like, well,
You know?
I've got nothing to do except I'll see you in a year
It's like
and
here's Epi, good
here's your
luck.
African and you call it,
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, call it a day and hopefully you don't have a reaction. No, I think it's a much more optimistic conversation to have with families that look, we can do something. I want more something, and we will have more something
Yeah.
to choose from. Can do things, and I think that's the fun part is that the youngest patients we've started, like the 1 to 2 or the underage one. I mean, by 4 or 5, they're just eating peanut because they don't know
Yeah.
anything different,
They
right?
don't, yeah.
And their
Yeah.
skin tests are most likely negative at that point. I mean, it's pretty amazing I mean, if you start at 6 to 9 months or 9 to 12 months, by 2 or 3, their skin tests are nothing. Their IgEs are not. I mean, it's just they're eating it, so it's fun. But Epic can do that potentially. Slit can do that, and then for the older kids that don't want to eat the food or do slit
Yeah.
vaccines, hopefully, or Xolair or other anti-IgEs. I mean, again, I think there's good protections out there for kids that
Yeah.
parents can feel like they're doing something fun. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, David, for your
okay.
time, the conversation, your incredible insights,
You're
and
welcome.
to, all the participants who are watching this webinar. We hope you've learned a lot from David, Dr. Fleischer, about the exciting future of food allergy.